The movie starts with Reverend Pfluger going to an Indian burial ground and performing a ritual that awakens an ancient power. The next morning, high school student Kelly Mason stops by the grocery store on his way to school to get something to eat. But, unfortunately, he is bullied by a bunch of kids from his school, two of whom are Nelson and Reed Whitcomb. The scene transitions to a native Indian by the name of Red Elk doing a ritual on the sacred grounds of the Indian burial grounds. The next morning, Kelly was homesick, and his worried mother, Bernice, calls a doctor to visit him. The doctor couldn't find anything wrong and suggested it might be wise to start a healthier diet. Later that day while shopping, Bernice sees Reverend Pfluger using the gifts of the burial grounds to heal people, and she tells him about Kelly's condition, and the Reverend sympathizes with her and agrees to go to her home so he can heal Kelly. As Bernice turns the car around for the Reverend, Red Elk approaches Reverend Pfluger and confronts him about the medicine that the Reverend discovered on the burial grounds. The two then get into a heated argument, and the Reverend just storms off with Bernice. At Mason's house, Reverend Pfluger dies while transferring the medicine to Kelly and healing him, and the next morning, Reed bullies Kelly and fails to cause him any harm and instead hurts himself. And feeling quite invincible, he goes to a pizzeria to get a job. Back at his house, Kelly was excited telling his mom about his new job, but is interrupted by a loud knock on the door. Perplexed, they answer the door, and they see that Coach Whitcomb was at the door, fuming to find out what happened to Reed that morning. Kelly denies any involvement, and as soon as the coach leaves, he confides in his mom about his new powers, and they decide to keep it a secret. Wait, hold on. Did you subscribe to our channel? Come on guys, you're here, you're watching the video. Help us out by hitting the subscribe button, as it really helps out me and my team to make more videos for you guys. And now, let's get back to the recap. During a school bonfire, the bullies get in Kelly's face and start a fight, but Coach Whitcomb breaks it up just in time. Having had enough, Kelly leaves the bonfire on his cycle, but Nelson and his gang follow him in Brad's Mustang and run him off the road. And as a result, Brad hits and runs over Kelly, which backfires and kills him, leaving Kelly unscathed. We next see Dominique and Sarah come to the site of the accident to see what was going on, and Kelly confides in Dominique about everything that's happening to him. Meanwhile, Red Elk goes to Pfluger's grave in search of the identity of the person that the Reverend transferred the medicine to before he died. There, he performs the ritual and is finally given the answer that he'd been seeking. While Dominique and Kelly were having lunch, Nelson and the gang plot a prank and tribute in honor of Brad's death. And on the other side of school, Kelly asks Dominique out for a date. One day, after school, as Kelly was finishing up his shift at the pizzeria, Red Elk approaches him and asks him about his current endeavors, which Kelly answers pretty vaguely. After his shift ends, Kelly goes home to tell his mother that he's asked Dominique out to the movies on Friday, which Bernice is really happy and proud to hear. But she was having a headache at the time, and Kelly offers to take the car and grab some aspirin for her on the way. In the meantime, Nelson and the gang were waiting until Bernice leaves for work so they can put their plan into action. But little did they know that Bernice was taking a nap in the trailer and Kelly had gone to the pharmacy. As soon as he leaves, Nelson and the gang break the support of the trailer, and as the trailer starts falling apart, a gas leak ensues and the trailer explodes. After getting back to the trailer, Kelly finds his home in flames. He runs inside to save his mother, but sadly, she was already gone. Once the police and the fire station respond to the burning trailer, they take Kelly to the hospital to make sure that he's okay. Even though Kelly was unharmed, Sheriff Adler asks the doctor to keep him for one more night, as he doesn't have a next of kin, and brings him a change of clothes. At the hospital where Kelly was being held, Red Elk waits for Sheriff Adler, who was also a native Indian, to tell him about Reverend Pfluger and what he did, and also about the gift that he gave to Kelly. However, in Kelly's defense, the sheriff tells Red Elk that he would get back what's theirs in due time, but that it's actually cruel to bring it up at that moment because Kelly was grieving. After his mother's funeral, Kelly was standing over Pfluger's grave emotionless and in mind asking many questions, and notices a dead plant on Pfluger's grave. Whilst Kelly was examining the plant, Sarah was passing by the part of the cemetery where Pfluger was buried to find Kelly vomiting after ingesting a petal from the dead plant that he was looking at on the Reverend's grave. Right after the funeral, Sheriff Adler waits for Kelly by his car and promises him that he'll find the best foster home for him and assures him that he'll be okay. As they were going to social services in the sheriff's car, Adler asks him if they had any work done on the trailer recently that might have caused its collapse. On the same road where Kelly and Sheriff Adler were driving on, Nelson and the gang were driving in Coach Whitcomb's car going to the river. Reed tells his brother and the gang that they should all confess to their part in the fire, but they all shut him down and tell him that they don't have anything to worry about. As the discussion was over, the boys insult Kelly while passing him, and the moment they passed, setting his heart on revenge, Kelly jumps out of the sheriff's car and heads to the river where Nelson, Tucker, Tony, and Reed were headed. The scene then transitions to where Nelson and the gang arrive at the river shortly after Kelly did, and Tucker goes inside the river for a swim, and the rest of them start playfully throwing stones at him. Meanwhile, Kelly, who was watching from a distance, reaches for Tucker's shirt, bites a small piece of it, and chokes himself, which results in Tucker helplessly gasping for air and being suffocated to death. Nelson dives in an attempt to save Tucker's life, but unfortunately he was too late. And as soon as they find out that Tucker was dead, they see Kelly, and Reed was so scared that he ran for his life. Kelly spares him, but Nelson and Tony's life was in danger, and both of them knew not to mess with Kelly. Concurrently, Sheriff Adler got Reed to lead him back to where they are, while the rest of the boys give their statements to the sheriffs, and in the meantime, Sarah and Dominique were on a video call when Kelly calls Dominique from outside by throwing stones and hitting her window. As soon as she opens the window, her mother tells her that dinner was ready and to be cautious about the open window. As soon as her mom leaves, Dominique opens the window to find movie tickets and Kelly standing outside. She then asks him what had happened at the river, and Kelly confides in her about everything. Dominique advises him that revenge is not the right move, and instead he should work toward making them confess and getting them imprisoned. The next day, while in chemistry class, Kelly bursts into the classroom and makes an impression of Tony's joke, which frustrates Tony into threatening to kill him. He baits Tony to a fight while the teacher goes to grab Sheriff Adler, who was luckily visiting the school. Meanwhile, in class, Kelly pressures the bullies to confess, but they obviously wouldn't, so he considers playing some mind tricks on Tony. He goes to Sarah and makes fun of the way Tony asked her out, which infuriates Tony into throwing the chemicals laid out for the class at Kelly's face. This backfires and burns his face, causing him to collapse and die, and Sarah then just tries to knee him, but just ends up hurting herself. Sheriff Adler comes back with the teacher and finds Kelly confronting Nelson to admit to what they did. But as soon as the sheriff sees Tony, his priorities change and he tries to attend to him, giving Kelly the opportunity to run off campus. That night, Sarah goes to Nelson's home and tells him the way to stop Kelly is through a plant at Reverend Pfluger's grave, and recites what she had seen at the Reverend's grave and how Kelly reacted to the plant. Right after grabbing his gear bag, Sarah and Nelson go to the cemetery and gather the plant from the Reverend's grave. Back home, Nelson puts the plant in the bathtub, and while his father, Coach Whitcomb, was washing up, he calls Nelson and tells him to get rid of the plant and reminds him that he and Reed will be training on the football field the next day. The following day, Sheriff Adler and Red Elk exhume Reverend Pfluger's grave. After authorizing the exhumption, Sheriff Adler goes to the football field to warn the coach that he couldn't protect him from Kelly, and Dominique was out for a run on the tracks, and meanwhile, Sheriff Adler examines the back of Coach Whitcomb's pickup truck and finds the chains used in bringing down the support of the trailer, and he then goes to question the boys about what he had found on the back of the pickup. Kelly sneaks into the back of the truck and grabs one of Nelson's football gear and ingests it. Subsequently, Sheriff Adler gets back to the field to ask the boys some questions, which they deny, and their father backs them up. We then see Kelly at the field with an electric drill and swallows a piece of clothing from Nelson's gear bag. Reed was pretty scared at this point, so he confesses to everything and runs away from the field. Then, to Kelly's surprise, Nelson had the plant that they stole from Pfluger's grave the previous day liquefied into a cylinder to use to hurt Kelly and protect himself. Kelly then drills his own knee so that Nelson will be in pain and be forced to confess. However, Coach Whitcomb starts to charge and yell at Sheriff Adler to shoot or arrest Kelly, but the sheriff tries to negotiate the situation. And then, Dominique hears hears the screams and calls out to Kelly and tells him to stop what he was doing, and as soon as he does, the coach charges to tackle him and makes them both fall in different directions of the field. After the fall, the sheriff goes to check on Coach Whitcomb, and in the middle of the ordeal, Whitcomb takes Sheriff Adler's gun, ignores the warnings of the sheriff, and tries to kill Kelly. As a result, Nelson and Coach Whitcomb get shot in the head. Dominique then tells Kelly that she doesn't want this new Kelly and prefers the old one, and the sheriff tells Kelly that he could cure him and bring back the old Kelly. Sheriff Adler and Red Elk start the ritual to rid Kelly of the powers, but Red Elk realizes that Kelly has had the power for too long and that he has to die with the medicine that the Reverend had given him. And this is right about the time the police came for Kelly. While attempting to escape the ritual, both Dominique and Kelly are shot by the police, and Kelly unknowingly gives the powers to Dominique while sharing their last kiss. And while Dominique was drawing her last breath, Kelly, believing that the power is still with him, reaches into Reverend Pfluger's body and eats his heart, which kills him. As Dominique and Kelly were being transported to the morgue, Dominique resurrects as a result of the medicine that was given to her by Kelly, and it is here that the movie comes to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed the recap. Make sure to leave me a like, leave a comment, also subscribe to my channel. I love you guys so much, and I promise to see you on my next recap. Bye!